welcome back to Navellier Market Buzz, episode 11. I'm Krista Navellier. I'm joined again with my father, Louis Navellier, and we also have a special guest today, Gary Alexander, who is the editor of Navellier Marketmail, which is a weekly e-letter written by Gary, Jason Bodner, Yvonne Marchev, Brian Perry, and of course, my dad. Gary likes to write with a historical perspective and is also an expert in gold. Gary, welcome to Navellier Market Buzz.
Well, thank you so much. It's good to be here with you both.
So first off, I was wondering if you could put into perspective what Tuesday's election results mean for investors. Is this a political earthquake?
It seems like it because once again, the polls were way off. They were really way off the last two Trump elections as well. Trump got a lot more votes in 2020 than the polls anticipated, and even more so this year. And the Republican or Trump votes rose in every state except perhaps my state of Washington, but all the votes aren't counted yet, so we don't know that for sure. So I would call it a landslide, earthquake, whatever you wish, because it was very clear, Senate and House as well. And as far as investors, we can get into that, but it's a good historical model to have this kind of move right now.
Like you mentioned, there was a discrepancy between the votes since 2020. Where did those 14 million votes just disappear on the Democratic side?
Yeah, I feel that's an unwarranted fear so far. I just looked up California. They have 5.5 million votes that haven't been counted yet. And also four other states in the West, all but Utah would be democratically held states, Washington, Oregon, Alaska, and Utah and California. Just haven't counted all our votes. Neither is Maryland. That's under 80%. So once you get all those votes in, I think it'll be fairly close to the total vote of 2020. But with this, P.S., there was a lot of vote harvesting by Zuckerbucks and others in 2020 in a mad dash to keep Trump out. But there wasn't that mad dash this year. I mean, Zuckerberg and all the other Silicon Valley people, with a couple of notable exceptions, had come around to see that Trump had some value, and Vance is a good partner.
The US dollar surged after the election results and the Treasury bond yield also rose, but gold prices actually faltered. So is that because international investors have confidence in the US economy?
Well, that happened right away. The first 24 hours, people with itchy trigger fingers and enter thumbs and everything else wanted to make a trade right away. But gold recovered and the 10-year yield came back down to where it was before. The dollar shot up really fast, but came back to where it was before. So I think calmer minds by Thursday had said, okay, let's not overreact here. It's going to be good, but not heaven on earth. They're not going to solve the deficits overnight. They're not going to end the war in Ukraine and Israel overnight. This is going to take a lot of work and really some cooperation on all sides to happen. So, yes, there was a big move internationally, but the reaction was back to, okay, the bull market continues, but not in a huge one-way direction, up, always up.
I also noticed that Bitcoin surged in the wake of the Trump victory. Is that because Trump wants the US to be a cryptocurrency leader?
Um, yeah, Trump likes the King Dollar theme a lot more than the others, and yeah, it has its pros and cons to have a strong dollar. But I noticed the BRIC nations met, and they want to have a alternative currency, but who's going to trust the paper from China, from India, from Brazil, from Russia, please? The only other competitor for a while was the euro, but it's not been a strong competitor in international reserves, global reserves. Gold has now surpassed the euro as the number two holding after the dollar, which is more than 50% of all holdings. So gold standard isn't really back officially, but the international central banks have voted more for gold than for any other paper currency in the last 10 or 15 years.
I would add, Gary, that, Brazil seems to be teetering on a mess because their deficit's over 10% of their current GDP. And of course, their interest rates are artificially high. So Lula da Silva's pushing his luck, for lack of a better word. And the other thing that we find interesting is the Wall Street Journal had this article how Europe is now headless because Macron is leading France, but he's in the minority party. He called an election and he prevailed because there's too many parties in France. They're all fighting with each other. But of course, Germany, their coalition government fell apart this week, so they're going to have elections. There'll be a vote of no
Right.
confidence. And last I looked, Olaf Scholz, a party only had 16% of the vote in the regional elections recently, and his other coalition partner, the Green Party, only had 10%. So that means only 26% of Germany is governing right now. So the Wall Street Journal had this headless article that Europe's headless, and what a mess. And I also find it interesting that when they gave Ukraine some money, they gave him a loan. They didn't give him money like Biden does. They just said, "Oh, here's a $50 million loan from the money we seized from Russia." So they want their money back, apparently. So,
Amazing.
but Trump, is now talking to all these foreign leaders, and if he starts to negotiate with Putin and Zelensky, and is he supposed to be with Biden? Is it because he's not president right now? So doesn't he have to be careful about what he talks to him about?
Oh, that's true. It's a constitutional situation in which you can't only have one president at a time, and you cannot negotiate a peace accord when you're a president-elect. That's very clear. However, I don't imagine that would stop them from talking about what they might do come January 20th.
Yeah, yeah. I know when we was talking to Zelensky, he put Elon Musk on the phone, so that was probably pretty interesting.
So now how does the stock market perform when one party has control of both Congress and the White House?
Well, I looked that up to make sure I got the right answer because I thought I knew all the facts, but gridlock still holds sway. That's when one party is in the presidency and another party in Congress because there are checks and balances. The market likes that because it keeps government under control. They don't have a monopoly power, which gives them a feeling of invincibility. They can pass anything, do anything. Most presidents have tried that their first 2 years, and then their first midterm, they get a big spanking, and the voters say, no, we don't want that. We don't want big, big, big government plans. So that's happened to most presidents recently. But when you have the trifecta of the House, White House, and Senate, that's only been true in the last 90 years for only 8 years for the Republicans and about 22 years since World War II for the Democrats. When the Democrats have complete power of all three, the market S&P has averaged 6.7% gain. When the Republicans, it's a small sample, so I hate to generalize, that's the first 2 years of Eisenhower, the middle 4 years of George W. Bush, and the first 2 years of Trump. That's only 8 years. But it's averaged 13.5%, which is very close to the gridlock average. So a Republican sweep is twice as good as a Democratic sweep, but not quite as good as split powers.
So Gary, where is Lopez Island where you live?
Lopez Island is part of the San Juan Islands chain, which, due to a little war called the Pig War, long story, but short version is an American settler shot a British guy's pig. And so Britain and America went to war over who owns these islands. That was 1859. And it took 15 years to solve. There was an American camp of future Civil War generals on one side and British camp on the other, but they never shot a rifle at all at each other. It was finally decided by the Kaiser Wilhelm of Germany that the U.S. would have these islands. So thanks, Germany. Appreciate it. And so we are the westernmost island archipelago in the United States, very independent. It's like a buffer state between us and Canada. We're very close to Victoria, BC, the capital of British Columbia. And so it's isolated living. It's limited in the sense that you can't really get off the island that easily. The ferry system is limited. We're like barnacles on the rock here. Hard to get off. And it's also very nice not to have a lot of people driving through who are strangers. So it's low crime rate and everything else.
So I assume your electricity is mostly hydroelectric.
Yes, that's true in the Northwest for almost every community. And the Columbia River system is almost half of the hydroelectric power in the U.S. It's such a mighty river. I have lots of stories about the Columbia, but there are multiple dams, and I've seen quite a few of them. They're masterpieces of engineering. And yeah, they provide 85% of our island power. It's connected through an underwater cable, and our main problem here is once in a while that cable gets interrupted or cut in one case. And especially in the early years when my parents lived here, they'd have 5 or 6 days in the winter with no electricity. That doesn't happen anymore, but we sometimes get 1 or 2 days with no electricity. So that's been a problem because of the remoteness of the islands.
So, with the AI data centers that are on the Columbia River, do you think it's possible that Trump can double the electric grid to power the AI expansion that is anticipated in the upcoming years?
That's a good question. I think Louis probably has a better answer than I do, but I would say that he has this honeymoon period and he better use it well without having big government programs to encourage private industry in a way that Elon and Vivek and others would advise him to get private industry involved and not make it a big government boondoggle. But I think that's where he would be pointed. Louis, do you agree?
Yeah, data centers goes where the electricity is cheap. So that's obviously the Columbia River Gorge, near Lake Mead in Las Vegas. Chattanooga's pretty hot because they have very cheap electricity there. Of course, they have dams and things, and they have extremely fast internet. Other places we would get data centers is wherever there's nuclear, okay, because that's cost effective. And once we leave hydroelectric and nuclear, then probably natural gas would be the cheapest electricity out there. Interestingly, Constellation Energy said that at least in Pittsburgh area, that natural gas was cheaper than nuclear, and they shut down 3 Mile Island. But Microsoft's making them start one reactor in 3 Mile Island because Microsoft wants carbon-free electricity. But we would assume under Trump that they could fire up natural gas plants all over the country. Of course, there might be some state opposition, so those states won't get the data centers. But there's enough states that are pro natural gas and already have a lot of natural gas power plants that it would work out. So, it's interesting in Reno, we have Apple and Google there, and we have the data centers there because, well, there's a lot of reasons, but one reason is they can use the desert air at night to cool the centers, but they're mostly geothermal, okay, and solar out there. We do have a natural gas power plant, so they use a little of everything in Reno. But yeah, I think with the help of natural gas, Trump can definitely
Yeah.
build up the grid.
We narrowly escaped a natural gas ban here in one of our state initiatives on the ballot, 51 to 49%. We can now use natural gas, but it was a close call, and they tried to ban it.
So, kind of switching gears, Dad, what do you expect for the consumer price index announcement on Wednesday?
Well, it's supposed to be up 0.2%. It might be up a little bit more in the core rate. With the CPI, we're always looking at owner's equivalent rent. It has starting to cool off at shelter costs. And if it finally continues to decline, then consumer inflation will disappear. Literally 90% of consumer inflation has been shelter costs. So that's one of those indicators that the details will be more important. I'll actually be on Fox Business when that report's coming out with Maria that morning.
So, what about the wholesale prices on the producer price index announcement on Thursday?
Well, that's going to be lower because they don't have owner's equivalent rent or shelter costs in that. And then, of course, we have the strong dollar, as you mentioned, and the stronger the dollar, the cheaper our imports. And the price of goods have been down in some months, usually on the strong dollar months. And the wholesale service costs were pretty tame too. So those are going to be the two key components, but I believe they're expecting that to be unchanged. So we are expecting a very good producer price report.
Do you expect that the retail sales report on Friday is going to be positive?
They better be because that's our economic growth. The consumer and service costs are carrying the entire economy. I think economists are expecting 0.4, but I would not be surprised if it was 7 or 0.8. And the last retail sales report was just wonderful. We had 10 of the 13 industries up, and gas sales were down because the gas prices fell. So if we can get another report like that with several industries up, it's going to bode very, very well for robust GDP growth.
And how Gary had mentioned before with the stocks right now, I'd love to know what your favorite stocks picks are after a very strong week.
Well, first of all, we are definitely having an early January effect. The small cap stocks have gone absolutely bonkers. I was actually shocked how uh, big the rally was when Trump got elected, and I guess no one anticipated a sweep of that magnitude. So that's a very good sign for America. And the small caps tend to do better when the dollar's strong. And The main comment I'd have is if you just look at some of the stocks we've been talking about in recent weeks, and I'll just name them. First would be GigaCloud. As I'm talking to you, they're up sharply because they had very good earnings. Another one that is stunning, I mean, absolutely stunning, is this Powell Industries that we've recommended, and it has not announced their earnings yet. God, it's already run up quite a bit. Beyond studying is the Sezzle that we talked about. As I'm talking to you right now, it's up 80% in a day. Okay. And it was running early in the week. So I'm sure it had a 100% week, but it had a huge, huge earnings surprise. So that stock is celebrating that. And this is the key with small caps is they're very volume sensitive. So when the money pours in, to say they can explode is a bit of an understatement. And then if you're looking for some stocks that haven't exploded, one of the ones we talked about earlier was this Vital Farms, VITL. It's an organic chicken stock, organic eggs and things. Um, they actually beat on sales and earnings, and I was pretty happy with the report. But there was a report that came by that says they were in line. And when that report came out, the stock got hit because people read the headlines, they don't read the details. But then later, Zacks came out and clarified, no, no, they beat on sales and earnings. So this stock kind of got manipulated by the algorithms, and it is a phenomenal near-term buy because it beat. Last I looked at 60% sales growth or excuse me, 60% earnings growth, and sales were very strong as well. Um, a couple stocks are now getting away from us that didn't rally tremendously when Trump got elected, but then now they're catching up is Sprouts Farmers Market, SFM. They had already beaten earlier. They were just lagging, but as of Friday, now they're taking off. This is a Whole Foods alternative. And of course, food costs have actually settled back down, and maybe all the prices in the stores haven't been cut yet. So guess who's padding the profits? And then finally, I think Costco's a really good buy right now. They have not announced yet, but they had announced very good same-store sales, and they were kind of quiet till Friday. So what's happening to this market is it's rotating. The stocks that were spectacular remain spectacular, but the stocks that maybe just didn't go up the first day, now they're starting to run the second day. That's what SFM and Costco are doing. So those are all examples of what's happened this week.
Also, can we talk about SMCI?
Sure. They provided guidance. It wasn't quite as strong as some analysts wanted, but the stock did well. It's been all over the place this week. But the bottom line is their sales are going to be up at least 186%, and their earnings will be up 126%, and that's the low end of the estimates. So I don't have stocks that have that kind of explosive sales and earnings growth. They also had an independent auditor looked at what they were doing for 3 months. They found nothing wrong with their accounting practices. Of course, they have a new auditor, and they will be updating their 10K, and they are not going to be delisted by NASDAQ, as Jim Cramer implied. I think the big controversy with Supermicro is their order backlog is just massive. And, when you're booking orders and you might not be able to fill them in 4 or 5 years, some people question, like, those aren't current sales, like those should be amortized. Well, I did corporate accounting, and guess what? Those are current sales. You book them and they go in the backlog. So I don't think they're doing anything wrong. But clearly people are hungry for these Nvidia chips, and Supermicro had access to them. And, it's possible somebody maybe placed too many orders with Supermicro to get access to those chips. But as far as I'm concerned, they are fine, and the stock has erased its gains this year. But just let these phenomenal sales and earnings come out, and I think the stock will be a big winner next year, and it's already firmed up a bit.
Well, thank you so much to you both for answering all my questions. And thank you to you all again for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Once again, if you have any questions that you want us to address next week, please leave them down in the comments below. But until then, thank you so much for watching. And thank you, Gary, so much for being here.
Oh, thank you. It was a pleasure.